You ever wonder what stops a science lab from, well, blowing up? It's not luck, and it's definitely not magic. It's actually a whole set of hidden rules, this framework that makes amazing science even possible. So let's get into it. We're going to uncover the system that takes all that potential chaos and puts it under control.
You know, every single lab is walking this tightrope. On one side, you've got these incredible, world-changing breakthroughs, cures for diseases, amazing new materials. But on the other side, you have accidents, contamination, totally failed experiments. So what's the difference, right? What's that one thing that separates a place of discovery from a total disaster?
And the answer, spoiler alert, is not luck. Look at this. On the one side, you have control. We're talking about things like SOPs, or standard operating procedures. That's just a fancy way of saying the official playbook for how to do literally anything in the lab. Everything's labeled, everything's safe. Then you look at the other side. Chaos, spills, accidents, ruined experiments. The difference between these two worlds really comes down to a system built on 3 core pillars. And that's what we're going to break down right now.
Okay, so let's jump into our first pillar, protecting the science. I mean, think about it. Before you even worry about keeping people safe, you have to make sure the science you're doing is even, well, real, that it's valid. This is all about making sure your samples, your data, your results, all of it are completely uncompromised.
And a huge piece of this puzzle is a process called fixation. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like hitting the pause button on biology itself. By using chemicals, things like formalin or ethanol, scientists can literally stop decay dead in its tracks. It freezes the structure of a cell or a piece of tissue at one exact moment in time so they can study it later.
But here's the catch, and this is super important. There's no single magic bullet for this. There's no one-size-fits-all plan. Protecting your science means you have to know exactly what your specific sample needs. It doesn't matter if it's a little vial of DNA or a live tissue culture. Each one has its own very specific, very unique preservation plan.
And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. I mean, look, for a short-term thing like some tissues, a regular fridge at 4 degrees Celsius is fine. But if you're trying to save something really fragile, like DNA or RNA, for the long haul, you need an ultra-low freezer cranked down to -80 degrees. Why? Because that's the only way to stop these tiny enzymes from literally chewing your sample to pieces. And what about light-sensitive chemicals? They get their own cool, amber-colored bottles. See? Everything has its place. It's an incredibly specific system.
All right, so we've got the science protected. Now we move on to the second pillar, which is arguably the most important one. Once your samples are secure, the #1 priority, without question, is protecting the most valuable thing in any lab, the people working there. And this isn't just one rule. It's about understanding that safety has layers.
So yeah, safety isn't just a single item on a checklist. It's a hierarchy, kind of like a pyramid. At the very top, the most effective thing you can do are engineering controls. These are physical barriers that literally separate you from a hazard. A fume hood is a perfect example. The next level down, administrative controls. These are the rules, the procedures, the SOPs we talked about. And then, at the very bottom, as your absolute last line of defense, you've got your PPE, your personal protective equipment.
Now I know what you're thinking. Wait, you just said it's the last line of defense? And that's true, but it's also the first thing you physically put on when you walk into the lab. Your lab coat, your goggles, your gloves, these are the basics. They are completely non-negotiable. This is your personal armor, the barrier between you and whatever you're working with. Okay, now this is a really important one because this is a mistake people can and do make, and it can be dangerous. People mix these two up all the time. A fume hood is all about protecting you, the user, from nasty chemical fumes. It just sucks the air up and vents it outside the building. A biological safety cabinet, or a BSC, is way more complex. It uses these superfine HEPA filters to protect you, your sample, and the environment from tiny biological things floating in the air. The main takeaway here? They are absolutely not interchangeable. You gotta know which one to use.
So moving on from the big, fancy equipment, a lot of lab safety just comes down to basic knowledge. And maybe the most fundamental rule of all is this. Some chemicals simply must never, ever mix. Seriously, think of them like two toddlers who just do not get along. You have to keep them in separate corners of the room.
And here's a cheat sheet for that. This is Chem 101, but it's life-saving stuff. You do not store acids and bases together. They can react, sometimes violently. And for sure, you keep oxidizers far, far away from anything flammable. That's just asking for a fire. So, C, organizing your chemical cabinet isn't just about being neat and tidy. It's actively preventing a catastrophe.
Okay, we're on to our third and final pillar,
Protecting the tools. So, you've got your samples secured, your people are safe, but none of that science is going to happen without the actual equipment. This last piece is all about making sure those amazing, often expensive instruments are calibrated, clean, and ready to go for the next person and the next big discovery.
And really, this all comes down to professional courtesy and just responsibility. When you're using a piece of equipment that everyone shares, the workflow is just common sense. You sign up for it, you double-check that it's calibrated, you follow the instructions, and this is the big one, you clean it up when you're done. It's a simple system of respect that keeps that million-dollar microscope from becoming a really, really expensive paperweight. It's about making sure the tools work for everyone, every single time.
But think about it. How on earth do you keep track of everything, from the simplest glass beaker to a super complex DNA sequencer? Well, the secret is a centralized inventory, one master list. This thing is the single source of truth for every single tool in the lab. It knows where it is, when it needs maintenance, and when it was last calibrated. It's basically the command center for the whole operation.
So there you have it, our 3 pillars: protect the science, protect the people, and protect the tools. But when you step back and look at all of this together, it really points to something much bigger. If there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that a truly great lab isn't just built on a long list of rules you have to follow, it's built on a culture, a shared culture of responsibility.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The goal is not just following rules, but forming habits. Because look, you can have the thickest, most detailed rulebook in the world, but if it just sits on a shelf gathering dust, it's totally useless. The real goal is to get to a point where you don't even have to think about it, where safety and taking care of the science and respecting the tools, it all just becomes second nature. It becomes a habit. And that really leaves us with one final question to chew on. We've seen how this deep culture of responsibility, both personal and shared, is what turns a chaotic lab into a place of controlled discovery. So the question I'll leave you with is this: where else does that exact same principle, that idea of shared responsibility, change everything? Not just in our work, but in our lives.